welcome everyone. What is going on? It's Friday night. That means you're a DFS nerd if you're hanging with me and Kevin. Joe the Brain Matz is not with us. He is in Vegas on his tour of NFL games last week.
Must be nice.
Is that right? That's what I said. I felt really bad because if I would have known Michael Penix was making his first start against the New York Giants in Atlanta, like if I had a future ball, I would have made sure we worked it out with Joe being a Giants fan and me being a Falcons one, that he came here for the weekend and we would have gone to the game. But somebody asked me, are you going anyway? Hell no. Traffic at the Falcons games is awful. And to be honest, I've gotten to where I kind of like the HD section, Kev. If it's a big game, totally different, right? Like there's nothing like being at a playoff game or whatever, but just week to week, I kind of like the comfort of my own home and a big screen TV.
Yeah, it feels good to not have to worry about a billion people around you doing stupid shit. Yeah. It's great not to have to pay $13 for a beer. It's great. Although Atlanta, for their credit, because of the whole concession thing where it's actually reasonable to buy stuff like that.
I will say the beers are still pretty expensive, a little cheaper than other places. Now the food and like drinks you can't beat. I mean, you can get a damn pizza and a Coke for like $4.
That's insane. Like, why you're getting the money anyway? I think you're just being greedy. And I know you're gonna get we have to pay the people. We have a contract and we have to make X amount of dollars and we have to pay the, whatever food service it is. But like, you're pumping in 65 to 70,000 people for 8 games. You're making more than enough money. I think you can manage.
Their new TV deal is astronomical. They're about to play like their stars, like Patrick Mahomes and those guys are going to play 3 times in 11 days just because Netflix wrote a big fat check to have Christmas games. And I am sure that part of the deal for Netflix getting the Christmas games was you're going to have good teams. And I don't know if you've seen now the advantage for the Buffalo Bills, where they are literally, I think, the only team out of the top 6 in the AFC that has a Sunday game over the next, like last week and then the next 2, to where the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Texans, like the Ravens, all these teams are going to be playing basically 3 games in 11 days. It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, that's not going to be for long because the TV is going to be coming for the Buffalo Bills because they're going to have the MVP of the league, Josh Allen, and that's what comes with having the stars, and that's what comes with having the sexy team and the team that everybody wants to watch. So, enjoy it now. Enjoy New England, Jets in New England for the next 3 games while you run away with the MVP, because next year and the year after, when Temu buys like the rights packages to Wednesday Night Football, good luck.
I love that. Did you see, because I was not aware, the Broncos had to agree to the game on Thursday, because when they went to flex it, apparently there's a part in the contract, and it makes sense. You don't have to play 2 Thursday games on the road, right? Short week, travel. And I'm sort of shocked Sean Payton in that big of a game was just like, yeah, let's do it. Obviously, it kind of backfired. But again, I guess it's, all for the TV ad revenue. So,
well, to be fair, I don't think anybody on this planet, even like Kreskin, could imagine the Chargers not blowing that game. But in a game where historically for the last quarter century, that's a classic Chargers game, they didn't blow it. In fact, they won the game.
Crazy.
We might be looking at the dawning of a new era. I don't want to say charging is dead, because we certainly had some of that against the Bengals, but charging as we know it could be an endangered species.
Amazing. I mean, in Lab we trust, right? It just took Lab McConkey joining the team. Actually, it's really Harbaugh. Newsflash, coaching still matters. Who knew?
Yeah, newsflash.
This slate is insane, my friend. Like, I have never had so much fun building lineups in my life, because I'm just going to go ahead and look, because we're going to be talking QBs first. Spoiler, I don't know if I have a lineup yet that has a QB that costs less than 5,200. You've got so many of those normal like junk QBs that good matchups, good weather games. Whether it be like, I love Aiden O'Connell, you can stack him with Bowers and Myers. That is 60% of his pass attempts in his last 2 full games that they played went to Bowers and Myers. So like huge volume. I don't hate Mac Jones versus the Raiders defense, Drew Lock versus my Falcons, with the fact he's had at least 57 rushing yards in both games. And then obviously, I'm a Falcons fan. I'm pretty excited. Big Penix energy, man. Like 4,500 to me, that's a dream in a dome versus the Giants D. Wow, the most touchdowns per game. They've actually been okay versus the run since they lost Dexter Lawrence, but been awful versus the pass. I just love what I can do in that range, and I don't know how many people are going to be like, yeah, let's go dumpster diving this week.
Yeah. Obviously you have your studs at the top, and there's good matchups that, like, I just wish Jameis was playing for the Browns against the Bengals, because that would be set up for like 44-41, just another third straight week of teams ping-ponging back and forth, and that just feels like a game where both quarterbacks that throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. But of course, Kevin Stefanski, the Grinch of this holiday season, decides we can't have fun. No fun around here. As Dorian Thompson-Robinson gets the start and puts coal in everybody's DFS stockings for week 16. So that's not fun. But there is a lot of fun to be had. Like, I look at Kyler Murray, 6,100. I think that's a very reasonable price. He hasn't been playing the best, and he hasn't gotten a lot of help from like anybody outside of Trey McBride. And we know, of course, the Trey McBride economic stimulus package has yet to arrive in the form of touchdowns. But, they're trying, to their credit. They're trying to they tried that shuffle pass to Trey McBride to get him going. So, like, they're aware that we have to get Trey McBride a touchdown. I just wish they were a little bit more aware and a little bit more cognizant of the fact that, hey, maybe we have a first round rookie that we have to get involved a little bit more as well. That would probably be awesome for all of us and would really round out the Kyler Murray play. That said, against Carolina, even if it's in Carolina, I do like that quarterback play a lot. Tua without Waddle, I don't know if that really downgrades that as much as we want. I think it's still a decent play, and I like Purdy a little bit more, to be fair, only $300 more. But yeah, that range of quarterback feels really comfy. Of course, you have your Hurts, because Philly, Washington, I think, are going to push each other, because now that we finally saw the squeaky wheel game, not just for one pass catcher, but for the passing game in total. We can throw over 19 times a game now. That has been established. They hadn't done that since week 3. So we saw.
I don't know that this is the week that they're going to do it. I just like Washington.
But isn't that the week that it usually happens, though, with the Eagles? Is a game?
That's fair. I just look at the first matchup. Like, Barkley went bananas. They're going to be on the road. I almost feel like that last week was. They knew that was a better chance to kind of get those receivers going. I'm not saying you're wrong. I do think Barkley's going to have a big game, and that might limit, depending on Washington. Obviously, if Washington scores points, you're right. It's going to turn into a free-for-all, and then you want everybody. But I do worry that Philly's kind of going to manhandle them, and then you're going to see a lot of Barkley.
I don't know if it's going to be manhandling, though. In Washington, that with condensed offenses where you're only playing likely one player out of Washington. If you're going to play Daniels, you're playing McLaurin, and then you can easily bring that back with either Brown, Smith, or possibly both. If you're playing the Philly side, you can do the triple stack with Hurts, Brown, and Smith, and then just bring it back with McLaurin. Or if you want to go cheap, you can bring it back with Ertz, and then, you have flexibility elsewhere. DFS wise, I think those are the two. That's the easiest full game stack to play, because there's so few pieces that you have to worry about. Because the Eagles don't really throw to anybody else. Like you don't see Jahan Dotson, you don't see Johnny Wilson. You get a random touchdown from Calcaterra, you get your Barkley, sure, but your pieces are so condensed there. And then Washington, yeah, they throw to a bunch of guys, but when Washington goes off, McLaurin is always brought along for the ride.
Yeah, and he wants to get right after by far his worst game of the year. And that first matchup, I can't say too many nice things about Washington's play caller, but I would hope he has a little something different in store this week. What about there's a couple other guys that I meant to kind of just brush on that are again in this cheap range. Geno versus Minnesota, they give up a ton of passing yards.
Yep.
He's somebody again that you can stack, honestly, JSN and Metcalf, because again, I think this is Joe Matz keeps bringing this up every week. Bottom 5 versus opposing teams' number 1 wide receivers, number 2s, number 3s, just across the board, they struggle with pass catchers. Caleb, again, with just Detroit's walking wounded. He's 5,500. I know it's been awful the last 2 weeks, but Detroit has 16 defenders this year they've placed on IR. I mean, at this point, and I think Detroit's going to score. I believe in that offense. So that's another situation. And the one I really wanted to ask you about, because Richardson 5,400 versus Tennessee indoors, I would assume he's basically not even owned at all because he's been pretty rough the last couple of weeks. But this Tennessee defense feels like they've given up on the season. If you look their last couple of matchups after being a frisky defense early this season, obviously you get, the huge rushing upside with Richardson. And then if he can hit a couple of big passes, which indoors, it's just always more likely that happens. I feel like he's somebody that's going to be really low owned. And I don't even care if you play him naked. If you necessarily, are trying to even make a milli maker, I think you can play him by himself. And that's not the worst call.
Yeah, Richardson's a sharp play just because public sentiment on him is we don't trust him. He is so hard to trust in terms of pass catchers because Pittman has been a disappointment. Josh Downs has been good when playing, but hurt a lot of the season. And then there's literally nobody else you could trust in that passing game. Because the Colts play 4 tight ends, because they play the Ashton Doolins and the Anthony Golds and the Adonai Mitchells. They play all these guys kind of like the Commanders, where they have a lot of those role guys. They play more tight ends than the Commanders, but still, when you see Kylan Granson, Mo Alley Cox, and Will Mallory, and all these guys, just condense it down and just play who matters, because you want to be able to bring guys around with Anthony Richardson, but you can play him naked. It's just, and it's Tennessee and it's at home, and it feels it's a really good spot at 5,400 to get a quarterback like that, where he can go off for 30 points. But I think it's really hard for me to do that. But in a multi-entry, if you're shooting for the moon and you want to kind of save up a quarterback, Anthony Richardson's not a bad play because what he can provide you. I'll throw Aaron Rodgers in that mix. I think this is probably the last week that you could play him. We obviously know the Rams when they have the offense to be able to push back when pushed. And again, condensed offense, because you can bring Rodgers in the run game. Breece Hall has been splitting a bit with more Isaiah Davis than Braylon Allen. Because he came back, last week, and that was the split where Braylon Allen was more of the, early down spell versus Isaiah Davis, who was out on more long down and distance and third down stuff. But you don't have to worry as much about the run game taking from the passing game, from Aaron Rodgers, from Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. So I do like that there. And obviously you can bring that back with Puka, bring that back with Cooper Kupp if you need to. That's, I think, Rodgers' best chance there, because I think they play the Bills, and I think they have somebody else, a tougher matchup in 17 and 18. Geno Smith, I like. I'm not as sure about DK Metcalf. He has been, he's just been so average the last 4 or 5 weeks, and he's banged up as well. So I'm not exactly sure if that's a spot I want to kind of throw my chips in on a double stack. I feel better. I feel better about Minnesota and Seattle picking and choosing my spots there, where if I'm going to just play a correlation, I'll play 2 pass catchers. Like I'll play Jefferson or Addison and then bring it back with a JSN versus just go introducing the quarterback in that on either side. Because we know the Mike McDonald offense, we know the very, sack happy Minnesota aggressive defense. So I do like, that lower range. I was talking about how I like the mid range within the 6K, 61, 62, 6,300. This range is pretty good too. And then you start to get into the Bryce Youngs, and then you start asking a lot of questions. Obviously you have Mac Jones, Aiden O'Connell. I would certainly take over him. But yeah, and then obviously Penix too. Penix is 4,500 against the Giants, which is looking at that line, like how wild is that? That rookie quarterback first start at home against the Giants, 8.5-point favorites. Like, when is the last time you've seen a rookie quarterback when it wasn't like, I don't know, I can't even say when it wasn't week 1, because it's just so unprecedented that you have a quarterback sight unseen in week 16 as an 8.5-point favorite.
I think it should be, though. You look at a lot of the metrics, like with the Giants secondary, they're really been getting exposed on balls down the field. And the one thing we know about Penix, he actually does have an arm. Like, he can throw the ball, he can move a little bit, which that's what I'm excited to see. Is I feel like Zach Robinson's been calling plays with a hand behind his back, because when you can't really play action despite a really good run game, you can't roll out like Cousins was just a statue. Real quick, we got a question in the comments from Nikki. Starting Baker, McMillan or Najee, half-point PPR. You're the McMillan expert. I actually kind of lean McMillan, but where are you going?
Yeah, I lean McMillan too. I don't want to touch Najee. That backfield has been so gross with Jalen Warren and obviously Cordell Patterson too, where Harris just has such a rock bottom floor, and like not even the ceiling is like medium, to where his ceiling is 60 yards and a touchdown. Like, and that's not bad.
Especially against Baltimore. Like, that's the number 1 run defense in the NFL. Yeah,
exactly. And that's a pass funnel right there, where teams will they don't care about. That's why they don't allow runs, because teams don't even attempt it. So yeah, I would take McMillan over there and have PPR.
All right, so the running back position, I'll go ahead and tell you that because I am playing a ton of O'Connell, Locke, and Penix, again, just love the value with all 3 of those guys. That then allows me to get basically 3 of the most expensive backs in a lot of these lineups. But again, Barkley, I think he's going to be lower owned than, I don't know. I go back and forth with this, but I do think he's going to have a big game. Again, Washington, 4.9 yards per carry on the ground. Only one team in the NFL, the Carolina Panthers, allow more. I love that. Bijan is a little scary for me, even in a good matchup, because 2 weeks in a row, I've been like the Giants without Dexter Lawrence. It's going to be, run heavy. They're going to run it down their throats with both Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry, and neither one of them really did anything. So, again, I kind of actually think it's more likely. Nikki, you are very welcome. Merry Christmas to you. I think it's more likely that, again, Penix kind of gets off in that passing game. But, like, Gibbs and Connor are in a majority of my lineups. I know they're going to be chalk, but Connor is just becoming like the fantasy playoff cheat code. I don't know if you remember last year, he had one of the hardest remaining schedules for the playoffs. I think he was like either the number 1 or number 2 running back in terms of points per game. And then this year, he's heating up again, 20-plus points 2 weeks in a row, scored 30 last week. And, I mean, come on, Carolina is the worst run defense I've seen in a while. 24 more yards per game on the ground than any other team in the NFL. And we know Arizona has not been afraid to basically just funnel this offense through James Conner and Trey McBride. That's really what they're doing right now. So I love that. And then again with Gibbs, like, it sucks about Montgomery, but it's such an opportunity for people who own Gibbs in fantasy. And then again this week, where Chicago is one of those rare teams, it's actually easier to run the ball on it than it is to throw on them. And let me make sure I have these numbers right because it's pretty insane. Gibbs has played, I think it's all of 4 games this year where he has, he's had 7 games with 55% or snaps more. He's averaging over 22 points per game in those. He played by far his highest snap count, obviously. Last week, 75%. He scored 28.4 points or more. And then this Bears team, like, they allow a ton of yards per carry. They're right up there with Carolina. And again, Washington, like I was talking about, they're tied with the Panthers for giving up over a touchdown per game. That's the most in the league. And these last 2 weeks, 5 touchdowns, 3 of them coming against the Niners with their 4th and 5th string running backs. I have a hard time staying away from them. I think I can still remain unique because, again, I'm going to be playing Penix with either, like London or Mooney. I'm going to be playing Locke with Neighbors. He's basically the only person I'm stacking with. And with O'Connell, you can either double stack him with Bowers or Myers or just run one of them. But this is a position where I'm loading up and taking my chances with those 3 guys. Most of my lineups have 2, if not 3 of them in it. And then I'm kind of changing around the rest of my positions and just not spending as much on wide receiver.
Yeah, Gibbs is the lock. It's the lock button play of the week. I would argue he should be about $1,500 more expensive. He should be $9K. So should Barkley. Like, I think you can base your lineup around 3 of these running backs and then just pay $6K at wide receiver or 5, dip into the high 4s, low 5s, and still make out like a bandit. Jahmyr Gibbs already got the vote of confidence from Dan Campbell that he could take the full workload. My only slight concern is if they actually because Dan Campbell has a pretty good record about, you look at the coach speak index where, the things that he says, he's usually pretty upfront and he doesn't BS people as far as what he says in pressers and stuff like that, and then translating that into the game. They've typically used Craig Reynolds quite a bit as a spell. They've wanted to use a little more Sione Vaki outside of special teams. We'll see if that becomes the case. But I do like Jahmyr Gibbs just as a total play, who I think is good for 75% of the snaps, who's good for 20 plus carries and then a lot of the receiving work as well. So I think Gibbs should be right up there with Barkley. You're never going to see that from DraftKings. So I think at 7,500, it's Mary Chalkmas right now, because Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be very, very well rostered. But
you got to love, right, that this Lions team, again, 16 guys been placed on IR. And sadly, you're seeing it. They didn't allow 30 points their first, I think it was 12 games. They've allowed almost 80 the last 2 weeks. Eventually, just the floodgates open. And I think even, again, because you can throw on them so much, even if it's the Thanksgiving game, I also love how you can play Gibbs and then run it back with, if you want to, Caleb Moore Allen. I think there is going to be points in this game, obviously.
They feel like a better Bengals, honestly.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I mean, we know that if Bengals have been a fantasy gold mine and a DFS gold mine for years now, and that's what the Detroit Lions feel like. They feel like a souped up version because you've got the pocket passer, you've got the electric running back who should pretty much have the role all to himself. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. You don't quite, obviously the Bengals don't quite have the tight end with Laporta, but I think that's a pretty good comp there. Chase Brown is always in play because nobody is taking his work. Khalil Herbert gets a carry a game. He's lucky to get that. That can be but poor Khalil Herbert is right. You take your, he's Oliver Twist. Please, sir, I want some more.
Just give him something.
That ain't happening. H-Chan's a fun play just because we know obviously the Dolphins won't have Jalen Waddle, so you could see him out wide more. He was lined up as a wide receiver on 47% of snaps last week. So now
I did not know that.
So without Jalen Waddle, you could see it probably get to that point and even more without. And obviously you have Malik Washington, you have all these other guys, Odell Beckham, River Craycraft, all these guys that they love to use a wide receiver, but when it comes down to it, they're still pretty condensed from like a point scoring way. Obviously, they have Jonnu Smith too, who's been awesome. But yeah, that's HN. If you're looking to hit the rushing, we know he can break one. He has not been anywhere near as efficient as he was last year. And I think that's like some of the Alvin Kamara in him, where he desperately needs someone to play off him. Yep. And it's Jalen Wright hasn't shown that. I don't even think he's NFL worthy at this point. Like, he has not looked the part. Raheem Mostert is an octogenarian. So I think this is somewhere where they
20 touchdowns last year. What a wild thing to say right now.
It is, but I mean, that's the thing is we know the Dolphins are at their best when they have multiple running backs that are just getting chunks, being efficient, and that has not been the case. And that's everybody has suffered because of that. So I think they go out and get a running back, but for right now, I think you're just hoping that HN can like break one. And then he's gonna, because he's so ingrained into the receiving game that he is almost a lock for like 6 for 50, and then anything else you get more, you can get a touchdown out of him. You always get the rushing touchdown as well, even if his line is not great. So you're destined for 20 points at minimum with HN, and then anything else you get is gravy. Connor play is excellent, of course. You look the scarlet letter there, or not the opposite of a scarlet letter. Because of the 32nd ranked.
The Grinch.
Yeah, the good. That's it's the Grinch. We got to figure out something there. The elf, I guess, maybe
elf on the show.
Will Ferrell elf. Yeah, Bijan, Saquon Barkley. Yeah, the running backs are just way.
Am I sleeping on Hubbard? Because I wonder with Leggett out, will he see even more pass catching opportunities? And then obviously, you can run on Arizona. I mean, Zach Charbonnet, I didn't know that was possible. Rush for over 100 yards versus defense just like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard flop lag game is well, that's on the way. We saw last week it was not that great for anybody really.
Right, they struggled.
Yeah, they struggled big time in a matchup where Chuba Hubbard was so popular last week. He had to have been creeping on 25%, 30% rostership and just laid an egg.
That wasn't the Dallas defense we've seen, that's for sure.
No, it was definitely not. That was the Dallas defense.
What do you think about Tajay this week? Because he's somebody that, Pollard banged up. My only concern is, he have, like 7 touches, and he just was incredible with the 7 he gets. Obviously, if Pollard is, out for some reason, that would be great for Spears. But otherwise, I just don't know if you're going to get the volume, needed to play him. I'd rather play one of those Raiders backs if I'm just looking for a cheap play than, Spears, unless you think he is going to maybe earn some more touches.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they've jerked Spears around all year, where he is just literally a handcuff one week, and then he goes out and does this, and then he could just as easily go back to being a literal handcuff. Where, last year we were seeing him out snap, out route Derrick Henry regularly. Like, that's what Justice Hill is doing right now. But Spears was a better version of that Justice Hill play last season. And obviously things change now. Obviously Brian Callahan in there. They look at those backs differently. But if Pollard is out, Spears, I think, is a pretty good play. I do want to see if I haven't seen if they brought anybody else up from the practice squad. I know they have Julius Chestnut, but if they bring up Joshua Kelly, I think that's going to be the sign for Tony Pollard and his availability. Because if they bring up Josh Kelly off the practice squad, I think you can feel pretty good about a Tajay Spears 15 touch game, where if you're getting him at what's his price?
He's cheap.
4,900.
Yeah.
15. I mean, just on a touch per dollar basis, that's one of the best plays of the week. But going through, we get after these, the Pollard and obviously Dave Montgomery, which that Dave Montgomery stuff is wild, that now he's got a shot to play in the playoffs, and that's going to screw up everybody's fantasy playoff, challenges.
Oh, I didn't read that. So they said he could be.
he could be available after like another opinion from a doctor. So, and then nothing is set in stone. So that's just going to add some kind of, new talking point and wrinkle for us to gab about for the next, 2 weeks. But more than likely he's out for the whole entire regular season. And then it's playoff time is, that's another beast entirely. Ken Walker back. Still don't feel good about that play. You just haven't felt good about Ken Walker for the last like 10 weeks.
If you can figure out what's going on with the Jags, it'd be great, but I don't trust either one of them. I don't ever know who they're going to give the damn ball to, so I don't want to do that. Like I said, I do like the PPR upside of Madison and Abdullah, because if they get down, they get targeted. It's kind of crazy, but overall, I'm planning on, like I said, spending up at running back, and instead, I think there's more value personally in the wide receiver range, cheaper range than. It's just, again, there's just so much. I mean, it's rare you get guys that are, get the highest workload and, they play the most snaps and they're the best running backs and they have the best matchups. And that's kind of where Connor, Gibbs, I mean, even Bijan, to an extent versus the Raiders.
Yeah. Jerome Ford could be an okay play.
That's
though.
Right. Yep.
And that's very dependent, because we talked about it on the waiver show when I wrote up Jerome Ford in the Fantasy and Frames waiver wire article. My one concern is that they bring Deontay Foreman up.
I thought you were going to say DTR.
Well, no, the other, Deontay Foreman, who's been a healthy scratch for the last few weeks.
Oh, that's true.
To take the Nick Chubb role and keep Ford where he is. He's seeing a lot of snaps. He's seeing a lot of routes. And keeping him in that role, not giving him a lot of the early down stuff, and just letting, whether it's Pierre Strong or
which would be the most Browns thing ever, because he became only the second back to rush for more than 60 yards versus the Chiefs. It's like, come on,
and obviously you can't start anybody else out of that for that contingent, that contingency at all. So that's what makes it like so terrible for playing Ford, but like. At 5,600, it's not bad, because you're really just hoping he gets in the end zone if you're playing him as a flex or an RB2 in DraftKings. I don't really think there's many. I mean, Patrick Taylor, that's going to be an interesting thing with the San Francisco 49ers because of the attrition at the position. That rhymed. I didn't mean to do that, but is it? I mean, do they bring up or they've had a Abanikanda. Who else do they sign anybody else? I had not seen.
I don't think so. It's one of those deals where I actually think you're going to see them throw a lot. I wouldn't even be surprised if this is the game where Debo, gets 5 2. You might see Juszczyk getting some extra. Like, I don't know. I have a hard time. Like, I know what we've seen, right? If you're the starting back for the Niners, you're going to get a huge percentage of the carries, but I'll be interested to see Taylor when Garendo went out. He got 8 carries, and like I think a quarter. So it's definitely possible. But and
Taylor's been good. He's been good because he came up with Green Bay. He's been a longtime member on their practice squad and has even gotten into some games. He was, the spell for like Aaron Jones last year for a little bit before he was released, put on the practice squad, and then the 49ers claimed him in the middle to the end of last season. And that's when Emmanuel Wilson came up and started taking a lot of the market share behind Aaron Jones. And then obviously Emmanuel Wilson stayed and now has pretty much the same role, splitting with Chris Brooks now in Green Bay. But, Patrick Taylor, his best asset is as a pass catcher. So that's where you could see maybe somebody taking early down stuff from Taylor. And then Taylor still having like a role, but you're not going to pay $5,200 for half a roll. Like you, unless that role is so fruitful where you're seeing, Justice Hill is like maybe the only back you could do that with. And that's only in specific matchups. So that would be where I'd lean there. And the Madison, Abdullah, like good luck. If you pick a winner out of that, like go buy a roll lottery tickets.
I would have just bought one. Brandon reminded us that centers matter, and I agree. Robert, or Brandon, sorry, losing Robert Hunt. It seemed outrageous what Carolina paid him. If you look, Carolina's offensive line has been surprisingly really good this season, and Miami's looks like it's taking a step back. All right, let's do some wide receivers. Again, if it wasn't for the backs, obviously Chase would be just, sort of a jam play, right?
I mean, Chase is always a jam play, really, for just because that's the one spot with volume, with the opportunity. He's been the best wide receiver clearly in the NFL from like a fantasy school. He's averaging 24 fantasy points per game. No one else is averaging anywhere. I think like 19 and a half is the next highest. He's been clear far and away the best receiver.
He's the Brock Bowers of wide receivers.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, not to his fault. I mean, there's, everybody else is like good. They're fine. They're just not scoring like they have, like we've had multiple 20 plus fantasy point scorers at the position. We just have not gotten that this season, and that's a lot to do with how the older running backs have been, with obviously Barkley, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, that kind of thing. But it's still obviously a fruitful position. I would much rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown at 7,900 than Jamar Chase at 8,500, just for a dollar-to-dollar standpoint.
What about Higgins? Because he's somebody I keep looking at.
Higgins is the classic. Yeah, he's the classic. If you don't want to pay up for Jamar Chase, but you still want access to the offense, he is like the, that's what we've been doing with Jalen Waddle for years. If you don't want to pay up for Tyreek Hill,
5,
if you don't want to pay up for Tyreek Hill, you go get Jalen Waddle and you try to arbitrage that production for lesser, dollar amount. So, and T. Higgins I think he's back. Obviously no injury restrictions. He was on the injury report this week and he's good to go. He's been, we just literally talked about how good Jamar Chase is, but T. Higgins has been like right up there lately, as far as, obviously the market share. The market share in Cincinnati is awesome with the top two, and that's always been the case for the last 3-4 years with Joe
Chase Brown too, because it's been like, good God. He was definitely one of the best ball drafts. Because Higgins, I don't even think he's played 10 games yet this season, and he has 81 targets, 50 receptions, basically 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. Love that. I will tell you, Neighbors to me is just knowing my Atlanta Falcons, knowing Locke is starting, who I think is their best option. I have a feeling Neighbors is going to have a big day against us. I really do. I don't know how we stop him. He's somebody that really concerns me, and 6,100 to me seems kind of cheap, especially with his volume lately.
Yeah. Obviously the concern is the quarterback and whether, they're going to be able to get him the ball, which is it who's even starting? Is it Drew Lock? Because I have checked out. I have checked out completely on the New York Giants. I think
and he's a fan.
Nobody can blame me. Yeah, Joe, as the Giants fan, I don't think anybody can blame anybody else other than Giants fans for checking out on the New York football used loosely Giants. But yeah, Neighbors, that's the worry. I would rather have DeVito in there, honestly. I would rather have Tim Boyle in there. Wow. Because they've shown that they can at least get the ball to him moderately accurately versus Locke, who, couldn't hit the broadside, but couldn't hit water if you fell out of a boat. Now I'm starting to sound like my grandpa with that phrase, but it's never been more apt to use than here. We're talking about Drew Lock and throwing the ball. I wanted to scroll back up.
Yeah, seeing though 23 targets the last 2 times.
Yeah, but it's just the efficiency, and we know that can go so far.
The other thing is, I do think that the Falcons, again, they've done better as of late. I still think they're frauds from a pass rush standpoint, and that has really been the issue with all the Giants quarterbacks. And since they've lost Andrew Thomas, that O-line is just really bad. And if they can, again, give time, it could be more. You're right, and probably JSN's the better value. He's 100 less. Has a great matchup as well. I feel good about London, don't you? First game with rookie QB, London pretty much catches everything. He's a gigantic target. and they've been targeting him anyway. Don't you think there's a good chance that they maybe look to him even a little bit more than they normally do this game?
I mean, big target. Get him just the thing with these rookie quarterbacks, and we've seen this with Caleb Williams, is that with Shane Waldron, is that you cannot throw the entire book at a guy and expect him to go out there and perform that day one. You need to give these quarterbacks easy button throws. You need to get these the most important thing that you can give a rookie quarterback in like their first couple starts is confidence. You need to give them easy throws. You need to not throw so much of the scheme at these guys and let them complete, a 7-yard curl. Let them complete just quick outs to the sideline. Let them get easy throws over the middle. Let them get dump offs on the flat to the running backs. Like, let them work through, just an easy progression. Let them, don't give them such complex downfield, long developing route combinations where you have to decide, on this 2-deep shell, if somebody's, bracket coverage, or if safety's going to play a robber and you don't have something over the middle. Like, you need to just give these quarterbacks the easiest throws possible. And I would say Penix, being a little bit older, probably has a step up over some of these guys in terms of what they've seen throughout their career. Ryan Grubb has run a pro-style offense at Washington and has had NFL caliber wide receivers, obviously McMillan, Odunze, and Julian Polk. I use NFL caliber very loosely with Julian.
I was going to say, it's kind of funny that Penix, a lot of people were making the case that he was carried by the wide receivers, and after what we've seen,
it's the other way. Remember, I talked about that.
Yeah, it was like maybe Penix was the one carrying.
Yeah, maybe it was.
Yeah,
maybe it was Penix that the call was coming from inside the house with that one. But yeah. So for Drake London's sake, I don't feel super great at the price, but it's Drake London, and he's dealt with worse. Obviously, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke. So, and we
as
were
a
paying
Falcons
this
fan too, and haven't watched every game. They have not pushed it down the field to Drake the way even they did with Desmond Ridder, which is a terrifying thing to consider. But seriously, Ridder would take at least 1-2. 40-yard heave if he'd be one-on-one down the field. And you just don't see Cousins do that because I don't think he could. Yeah. And again, I think that London's one of the best at the ball receivers in football. He comes down with a lot of, 50-50 balls. So that's great. This 5K range.
Well, I just wanted to say one
lower. Sure. Absolutely.
Real quick on the Jerry Jeudy that's the most untenable price I've ever seen in my life for a quarterback. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's top target. He will be literally 0.5% owned. In
who is he throwing to? If you had to guess, what Browns
tight end
says Njoku?
It's literally the top. I think 4 of the 5 top game pass catching games. I'm going to pull it up right now because I just sent this message out on Blue Sky.
Of course, he's questionable
yesterday. The top fantasy stat lines Dorian Thompson-Robinson has supported in his 3 career starts: David Njoku, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, Cedric Tillman. And he hasn't gotten anything more. No, he's thrown 1 touchdown in his career, DTR has, and that was a 2-yard touchdown to Harrison Bryant.
What are they doing? Seriously,
it's unserious.
Is this tanking?
You gotta be. It's 100% unserious. To look at Jameis Winston, who has, for all of his faults, moved the ball, actually moved the ball, scored points, generated offense, and then to make we really should have seen this coming when Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles. The first quarterback out was DTR. And then the only reason Winston was in because DTR broke his finger. So, yeah. The highest fantasy points that that any of these pass catchers have gotten with DTR as quarterback, 12.6 PPR points. That's the highest. So, what are you honestly expecting from Jerry Jeudy? You can't expect him to be just outright carrying guys. I know Cincinnati is not great, but DTR is even worse. So I don't think you can trust him. And then,
so do you hate Elijah Moore or no? Is he somebody that you would consider playing at 4,800 or?
I'm hands off. I mean, I'm completely hands off.
It's just Njoku or bust.
It's Njoku if he plays, and even then, because he's what, the fifth highest salary at tight end. I'm completely hands off for the Cleveland Browns. Like I do not trust DTR. I don't want to put any money if I don't want to put any of my dollars on a Cleveland Brown as long as DTR is there. And I will say also, lock button Brian Thomas against the Raiders. Like I think that's just a locked in 20+ points.
No, I mean the volume is there. I'm more talking
about
it doesn't matter.
He is elevating Mac Jones. He is elevating these quarterbacks, and that's what you want from. You're getting this from a rookie wide receiver in his 16th game. Like
no, he's incredible, man.
He has been awesome. Yeah.
Real quick, we got a question again in the chat. For me, this is pretty easy. I love McLaurin. This is a really difficult matchup. I think he had one catch versus the Eagles last time they played, and Bucky Irvin's been one of the best running backs in football, basically, since he's wrangled the lead of that backfield. So I would go Bucky. Which way would you lean?
Yeah, Dallas has been playing a lot better. I'm taking McLaurin there, and I'm just on the hope. I mean, McLaurin's I think he's gonna get there no matter what. But if that game gets pushed to where Eagles are having to pass the ball, they're both, obviously that feels like a game where it could be Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts just trading drives. We talk about range of outcomes all the time, and sure, the highest outcome would be Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels is trading drives. The average outcome is like a 27-21 game. The Eagles win, where Jaden Daniels maybe slips up a little bit, but McLaurin still gets there. I'm really holding out hope for that ping pong game between Jalen Hurts and McLaurin, because I think that can get there. I think that's got a pretty good chance of getting there.
All right. They again in that 5K range. I mean, you can sign me up for basically any of these guys. And this is one of the reasons that I'm big on it. Jacoby Myers 5,800. I'm good with it. Devontae Smith, everything you're saying, good with it. Love both Moore and Allen, who are both in that 5K range at 5,700 and 5,300. I mean, if Tillman plays again, I hate the fact that DTR is playing, because otherwise he would have been a smash play for me. If he was playing with Winston, I can't recommend it. But in a majority of the lineups I've built so far, I have either Moore or Allen in the lineup. And then again, in a lot of lineups, I have Myers as well. Who do you like from this range? There's a bunch of guys, again, basically right after you get through, we were just talking about JSN and Neighbors and, London guys who like in that range. I like a lot of guys in this range too.
Yeah. First guy Myers is right there. Devonta Smith at that price, where we've gotten him for 6,700, just last year. That feels really good, knowing that nothing has changed with Philly. They're still condensed. They have no Dallas Goedert now.
That makes it
even, and that makes it even more condensed. So huge game from Devonta Smith last week, and I think he can keep that up. If that game goes how we literally just said, if that game's going to go back and forth, between two playoff teams. So I do like that there. DJ Moore, the DJ Moore utilization, special. They turned him into Wan'Dale Robinson so quickly. And,
even with the carries, he had 3 carries last week.
Right. They got hit. Yeah. And that's the thing. They did that really early too. I think he had that on the first drive or second drive. And then they
ran the same play back and forth, and both times they got 10 yards. They ran it right and they ran it left. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they didn't go back to it at all. Why would you do that? And then not, just forget about it. Yeah. That didn't happen. No, just
we were looking for 15 yards per run, Kev, not 10. So that's it. We're done.
The last 6 weeks after week 9, DJ Moore's ADOTs by week: 5 yards, 0.9, 2.9, 10.5, 4.1, a season low 0.4 yard ADOT. But he's still 8 for 46, 6 for 49, 8 for 97, 7 for 106. They're letting him get the ball in space and making a play. That's perfectly fine. Like, that's obviously, we talk about Wan'Dale Robinson as like a bit or like a joke, but that's what it's like. And when you get a wide receiver that has the juice that DJ Moore has, especially yak wise and getting him out in spaces, like, that's pretty good. Now, it hasn't worked out totally the last couple weeks, but the targets are there. Like, he's averaging 10 targets a game the last 5 games. So I think the price is fine. Just the role is different. You're not getting downfield stuff with him. You're getting.
I do think that this is a defense that, again, with all their issues and look at what Johnson did last week. There was a lot of plays where we're not talking bombs turned into 60, 70-yard passing plays, and DJ Moore can, out of all the Bears guys, is most likely to do that.
Well, they've been using Keenan Allen deep too, and then obviously the Odunze stuff. That's been a season-long thing where that just hasn't hit.
I don't get
consistently.
It. He's so inaccurate to him compared to everybody else. It doesn't.
Well, that just seems that could be more of an Odunze thing as far as the efficiency, because if you're throwing those balls up, and a lot of NFL receivers can go up and get those balls, and maybe that's not a skill set that Odunze. He has it and can be that guy, but maybe it's not quite there for him yet. Where they're throwing deeper to Keenan Allen, deeper than they have. We just talked about DJ Moore having the ADOTs. I mean, last 3 weeks, 13.3 yards, 7.4, 11.9, where we've known Keenan Allen to be like a 7 to 9 yard ADOT guy over his career. So he's getting used deeper because of that kind of shift. And we've seen that with Carolina when they had DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel, where they were flip-flopping those roles where DJ Moore was a short guy and, Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson were deep guys. And then that 1 year, I think it was 2019, DJ Moore was like the solely deep guy running 16-yard ADOTs, and Curtis Samuel, we know now, is like a short area guy. That's really where he started doing that. So we know DJ Moore can do all that stuff, deep, short, intermediate. He's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but the way they're constructed now with Thomas Brown calling all the shots, yeah, Keenan Allen's been more of the deep guy. Rome Odunze has also been pretty deep, but still inconsistent. And then DJ Moore is like the set your watch to it. He's getting 10 targets, but you're just hoping he breaks one off in space. So, and then where's Keenan Allen here? He's got to be 54.
5,300. Yeah, he's 53, I believe.
That's a great price for Keenan Allen.
I'm with you. That's why I really like both of those guys. I think that if you think Detroit is going to score points, which I do, I think it's an amazing opportunity because it's what we're talking about with the Raiders. Yep. Very condensed. I mean, it's basically 50-60% of his passing targets are going to go to those two guys. And, Odunze gets a nice slither, but it just the success rate is much lower than what you're talking about with.
He's a next year play.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Keenan Allen is a free agent. More than likely, he's not returning. He's going to be, that dude is so destined to be Kansas City Chief, Keenan Allen next season, or Pittsburgh Steeler Keenan Allen. He feels like he's going back to the AFC to play at a contending team. And he'll be.
I'd like him in Buffalo.
Speaking of Buffalo, do you have the stomach to try?
I don't want to talk. No, I can't do it. He's dead.
No,
I hate that guy. I hate him so much, and I hate myself more than anything because I think you were the one that said, "I can't believe I'm recommending Amari Cooper," and I was like, "No, man, this is the dream scenario," and it's like I'm looking on the field during that game and just going, where the F is Amari Cooper? Because he wasn't on the field, and when he was, they weren't targeting him. This Buffalo offense is kind of maddening from a pass-catching standpoint outside of Khalil Shakir, and even he is not a heavy targeted guy.
Yeah, Amari Cooper played the second lowest routes that he's had since his first week as a Bill.
Against a team that runs a ton of man, which is what he's supposed to excel at.
And a ton of men. They run a lot of different wide receivers in specialized roles to where, and it's funny because we talked about the Ravens. We haven't even talked about it. The Ravens released Deontay Johnson today, which is just so wild. Like that, he must have been such a malcontent to do
I
that.
called it. I mean, he was having an unbelievable season, and Carolina was like, we will literally give him away for peanuts. That's, to me, always a huge red flag. And they do not have nice things to say about Deontay Johnson in Pittsburgh. So that's basically already 2 locations where both of them were pretty successful. The teams were just like, nah, we're good.
Is he going to be how long until he's shirtless in the end zone in this last game? Running past Mike Evans.
Oh, my God.
But yeah, that's the thing with Buffalo is that it's Josh Allen, but you're just hoping like other pieces come along for the ride. It is so Kansas City adjacent. It's not even funny. With all of these wide receivers in specialized roles, you can't pinpoint, you can't pick one over the other. I would be so far as to say Amari Cooper's 14 targets the previous week before last week's 0. That had to have been the highest target number of a player that wasn't injured that to get completely blanked. Had to be. Like, if not, it's close. Like, obviously you can get 14 targets and get hurt, and that's why you're not getting anything.
Right.
That's why you don't play. But you still played 42% of the routes. Like, we know Matt Collins is there. We know Khalil Shakir, is in his specialized role.
They're using these running backs in a million different ways. Joe Brady deserves a lot of credit because he's making it really difficult for opposing defenses to figure out where they're going. I mean, he knows that, look, the star is Josh Allen. He can pretty much get it done with whoever. And I think by changing it up each week with who's featured and who gets it, it's just really difficult for these defenses to hone in what their game plan is and how they're going to attack them. And man, good for them. Josh Allen is just, I mean, the throw, the way he got hit helmet to helmet on what should have been a 15-yarder. And literally you think he just got knocked out. He doesn't even let his head hit the ground. He just turns and smiles at the ref like, yeah, that's 15 yards that way. I'm like, is this
that's the Haley Steinfeld effect.
Oh my God, he's a cyborg, bro. Like, he's unfreaking real.
He's having the best run out of anybody right now.
It's insane.
Engaged. The Bills are the team in the NFL right now. He's going to
schedule advantage, rest advantage. Everything's coming up Buffalo.
Everything's coming up Millhouse.
All right, we've spent way too much on wide receivers. Let's just do some give a couple of cheap guys that we like. For me, Coker plays, that's one. Washington, again for the Dolphins, with Waddle out, I think that's real value because they're going to do exactly what they were doing with Waddle. It's going to be quick releases, quick passes, and you have somebody that's just an absolute burner, to try to take off on it. And then, I mean, if you want to say Calvin Austin, without Pickens, I don't hate it, but I would rather spend up and honestly, take a Washington or something than probably risk that just because I don't like what I've seen from Pittsburgh's offense without him.
I thought Terrell Owens for a second. That's why I clicked on.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Well, because Underdog has, they have Johnny Manziel in the player pool, guys they haven't taken out. And I saw T. Owens for San Francisco. I'm like, hold up, let me see what's cooking over here on DraftKings. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Calvin Austin does not feel good. No Pittsburgh receiver feels good right now, but he would be the guy that feels the least terrible out of that. And then, I mean, if you're just totally punting off wide receiver, De'Ami Brown is going to get opportunity as well.
It's Joe's boy. He made a few years ago one of the greatest calls ever where he had De'Ami Brown versus, I think it was the Titans. And I literally made fun of him, and then he went out and I think got 3 targets, caught 2 passes for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. And ever since then, I'm like, Joe, you're a genius. I'll never doubt you again, bro.
That was my Tyquan Thornton play from a couple years ago. He did that. And Gary
I don't remember Tyquan Thornton having a good game, so good call.
Yeah, Gary Haddow in my group chat was like, how the hell did you do that? I posted my lineup, because I usually post my lineups. If I'm going to play heavier DFS, I'll just get a little feedback. But yeah, that he was like, how the hell did you get, because he was Stone Min, he was 3K. How the hell did you get on that play for the day? What a sad state of
more for sure,
affairs.
3,600. I meant to tell you, if for some reason, because now Coker has a quad deal, if Moore is a go and Coker's out, like again, these PPR machines, like Moore was getting targeted so heavily before Thielen came back. So I do think he is worth a flyer at 3,600. So what
Yeah.
you might get, maybe 10, 15 points out of it.
Yeah, you could squeeze blood from a stone there. I mean, that's pretty much what it is at this point. Bryce Young had his worst game since he returned, and guys are allowed to have bad games. He's been playing a lot better, and they're at home. I think it's still a good spot. So, I think Thielen's still in play. If Coker plays, I think he's still in play.
I like Thielen at 5,500 a lot. Like I think people sleep on him after he still saw 7 targets, caught 5 balls. It wasn't like it was what Bryce's worst game is what you said since he came back. He still scored like 11, 12 points.
Yeah,
he's gonna be fine.
Tim Patrick is another guy that's like
is interesting.
He's scoring touchdowns and he's involved in the offense in that Josh Reynolds-y way that I talked about last week on the Waiver Wire show.
Especially because Jameson is so boom or bust, so it's like it's the kind of second Lions pass catcher that
right.
It doesn't have to hit a home run to have a decent game.
And he's bigger too, which allows some more red zone stuff.
I still can't believe Denver let him go. Like you would think that would be a very good weapon for Bo Nix, but what do I know?
If you like one catch for 67 yards, Keon Coleman's your guy.
I thought you were going to suggest the hyphen king because you kind of dragged the cursor.
Dorian Thompson Robinson ruined hyphens for everybody. So look, that bid is no longer salient.
What about Downs? I meant to ask you.
That was the other guy that I was going to say, where I like obviously him just over Pittman being a Colts guy. Like he's been a bit hit or miss, and that just goes along with the Anthony Richardson play, where you don't have to play anybody with Richardson. If you're going to play somebody, I want the upside of Downs.
I'll be honest, I didn't know he was under 5K. Like that is a crazy cheap price for a guy that we've seen most weeks, even with Richardson, can have at least 5-6 receptions and gets a bunch of looks.
Yeah, and Pittman I think he's still hampered with. I mean, those back injuries don't just go away after 1 or 2 weeks. Or obviously that was
wasn't there like rumors he was done for the season, and he's basically played since then. I think.
Well, there was a thing he was going to go on IR.
Yeah,
and then he missed like a week and then came back like, hey guys, nothing happened, don't worry, you didn't see nothing, I'm here, give them the Men in Black memory erasing little thing there. But yeah, Pittman has been just a stone floor play with no upside whatsoever, so I don't want to touch that. Other than that, you couldn't get me to start a Patriots wide receiver without a court order.
Any interest in AD Mitchell with Pierce out for a home run play? And
I mean, he's cheap enough. He's what, 38? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
he's cheap enough to where that's a play that makes sense, from a opportunity standpoint, where you can with Pierce out, that locks him into 70 to 80% of the routes there.
And maybe he gets those Pierce routes right for the home run plays.
Yeah, you're really hoping he goes 3
just catch
targets,
ones, bro.
2 for 80 and a touchdown. And you made your week already.
Exactly. Tight end this week for me. Yeah, it's like about as simple of a week as ever. I want a lot of Bowers and McBride. Bowers is averaging, I believe it's 19 points per game with O'Connell starting. So that's a smash. Again, McBride versus Carolina. That's a smash, but I'm going back to the guy that was by far my best call last Sunday. I pivoted to him as the week went on, and it's strange. I mean, again, he's questionable. Make sure he's going to play, but the same thing you're saying about BTJ, it's the same deal with Strange. You got Mac Jones targets tight ends like 30% of the time. The first game that he played without Ingram since Mac Jones, took over as QB, gets targeted 12 times. And I think that game could turn into, like, both of those defenses are really lousy. It would not surprise me if that turns into a shootout to where you were talking about, like BTJ. I have tons of lineups with O'Connell, Myers, Bowers, Strange, and BTJ. And it's, to me, worth taking a shot on because it allows me in those lineups, if I want to play Saquon, if I want to play Connor, if I want to play Gibbs, if I want to play Chase, you can play whoever you want by stacking those 5, because none of them other than really Bowers is what you would consider expensive.
Yeah, the top range is going to be very attractive for people that just want production out of their tight end spot and not have to worry about or people that are playing lower end running back and wide receiver plays that have the ability to afford those guys. The mid range from, like, I would say Jonnu down to like below.
By the way,
37.
the joke I meant to mention, you've completely sold me on where, like, if he is playing, I'm going to get him in lineups because that's just.
Who's that?
Njoku. Like, that was somebody I wasn't even really considering, and now, like, with the stats you just gave me about him playing with DTR, if he's starting, obviously I'll put him in plenty of lineups.
Yeah, that so yeah, after like the Jonnu range, that middle range down to like 37, that whole range is going to be so unowned. Nobody is that's like the water has been drained out of the pool. But Sam Laporta might just be back on the menu, 9th most fantasy points given up to the tight end position by the Chicago Bears. We know Detroit is going to have to pass. Yeah, I do like that spot, and he's back. He's been perfectly fine. He's been back on the menu, scoring touchdowns. I think he had it was 111 yards last week. Let me pull it up here. Sam Laporta, yeah, 7 for 111, earned his most targets in any game this season, most air yards, 26%. Like, the routes have always been there. That's never been in question. It's just his market share in the offense, and it just is now started to manifest itself with 3 double-digit games in a row. His best game, being last week with the 111 and 7. Obviously,
he seems like a cold outdoors, type guy too, right? Like, It's just like, frigid temperatures. I can see him going after Laporta. I like that. He's probably going to be low owned. The
Strange as a lock button.
God almighty, like, I'm so excited. Would Atkins, like, if say Njoku's out, would you then look at Atkins or no?
Well, that was the reason why I made that post on Blue Sky, was because if Njoku's out, I think Akins is perfectly fine as a streaming guy, as a lower end punt play. I don't know. It's either Akins or Atkins. I don't even know.
Buddy, if I had to trust one of us to pronounce the name right, I can promise you I'm not going to bet on me. So I know my shortcomings.
I mean, with an adult in the room now at quarterback for the Titans, I feel a little bit better about Chigakonkwo hitting a ceiling, or at least hitting a good floor in terms of being the second target after Calvin Ridley. So I do like that at 3,400.
Did we sleep on Ridley? I meant to ask you that with the change at quarterback. I think he was like 5,700, and I was wondering, like, the biggest issue with Ridley has been getting a ton of volume, but it's been so inaccurate. And I'm not acting like Rudolph is, Joe Montana back there or anything. For your younger kids, Tom Brady. But he, I do think that is a pretty big upgrade indoors. I think Indy's going to score points because, again, Tennessee's defense, it's like they've just thrown up the white flag in the last month because they were a really good defense till last month. Now it's everybody's just, hell, Washington had like a 30 burger on them, I think, in the first half.
Yeah, Ridley's been out there and he's been fine. He's 44% of the air yards all season. That's tops on Tennessee by a wide margin. Obviously he's out there on every, 8.2 yards per target. It's not like super great, but he's been a lot better toward the middle of the season than he has been in the last 3 with 9, 5.4 and 8.2 yards per target. So he started to see a little bit. He had 11 targets against Jacksonville, and And then he had that 14 target game against Detroit in week 8, 10 for 143. He's only scored 3 touchdowns. Like, I think a lot of it has been the quarterback, but even like when Mason Rudolph's been out there, like he's been fine, but he spreads the ball out to a lot of guys. That's like the Tennessee mantra where we talk about condensed offenses, and Tennessee is not one of them. Tennessee has multiple tight ends that they love to get the ball to. They love Chigakonkwo and Josh Wiley and Nick Vannett and all these other guys, and then they throw to the Mason Kinseys and the Jaquan Jacksons and Bryce Olivers. There's all these wide receivers, all these tight ends, but at the top of the Calvin Ridley's always out there. He's like he feels Cortland Sutton-y in a way where Cortland Sutton has actually realized some of the target potential where Ridley just has not. So that's about where I am with like the Titans, as they feel very Broncos-esque, to where it's much more variance between those options. And obviously with Okonkwo versus the Denver tight ends, like that's no question. Okonkwo there. So I do like Ridley a little bit at 5,700. I can make that make sense, and I can talk myself into that. But I think Okonkwo is the value play there at 3,400. I would like that much more than Ridley at 57.
All right, we'll build some lineups. We can talk defenses while we do that. So again, if you're wanting me to kind of lead it off, it's going to be a lot.
Doesn't have to be quarterback. You can go any position if you want.
So I really do like, regardless of the quarterback, some combination of BTJ, Strange, Bowers, Myers. Or if you want to, in some kind of form of that way. And then again, we can get actually creative with the QB, because I didn't even think about that. Even if you didn't want to do, Bowers and Myers, you could do, say, Bowers and then Abdullah or Madison. I do think there's going to be a lot of points there. I think that the Jags passing game, extremely condensed. The Raiders passing game, extremely condensed. And both of those defenses are horrible. Like, I don't trust what happened. Atlanta basically just threw out the white flag last week and said, look, we're not going to throw it. And they were able to squeak it out versus the Raiders. I don't think you're going to see Jacksonville do that this week.
Yeah, that's a fun little quartet of guys that I think all together won't be, because usually those guys are going to be having a quarterback go with them. And that's not the case here, that you can get unique with another, like maybe a skinny stack with that. So with that,
because I've also tinkered around with like Connors and Thielen, which again, like if you think, say, Arizona, I think Connors going to have a huge game.
I think I'm gonna smash Jahmyr Gibbs in this lineup.
Let's do it.
I think he's the best play of the week.
Do we run it back with Moore or Allen, or
you could do that. I actually want to actually pay up a little bit for a defense and take the Lions defense.
Let's do it.
And we still got 5,600 to play around with too. To where we could do, can we do Rodgers and Adams? What does that do for us with running back? That cripple us? Yeah, it does.
What's Abdullah? That'd be too many, probably Raiders.
Let me see here. Let's put a run. So we don't have to do Lions defense. We can cheap defense.
I was looking at the Titans, everything, all the concerns we had about Richardson or whatever. I know I said that they've been awful, which they have, but Indy has been very known to turn the ball over. You even got Taylor, who, appreciate that, buddy, had him in several playoff leagues, cost me a touchdown. I don't know why players continue to do that. It's, to me, like the dumbest thing. It's like they black out right before they go in the end zone. I just don't understand it. It's like, just make sure you're in the end zone before you drop the damn ball.
Right. Remember the All-American? Was it Deshaun Jackson who did that in the All-American game?
Yeah.
That was like the first time that I think that happened.
He did it versus the Giants. He did it versus the Giants in the NFL on a punt or kicker track. Forget which one it was.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. It really.
I think
does.
I'm going to toss Keenan Allen in here for some of the salary stuff.
Told me into that.
To pair with Gibbs, and then we need a quarterback, running back, and it doesn't have to obviously be the same team, but you know, if we get to Connor, what's that do? Let me see here. Yeah, because that puts us in a little bit of a bind salary-wise. I think we could be creative and make it work. Just because if it were like, I wish it was like 6,500 per player, and I think that would be in a way better spot.
I mean, what about somebody like Ford at 5,600? And then that should give us a lot of flexibility at QB.
Too bad. Or you like Breece Hall? I mean,
I'm good
Breece
with that
Hall
too.
at 61.
If you want to go more in the Jets game, I ain't got no problem with that either.
And then it could go. I mean, you could also because that would go up against their defense. You could go Caleb and hoping that they get pushed to where you play that game cheaper.
You just got to again remember. I have no problem with that. He had no points at half. Last time these two teams played, ended up scoring 26 points with literally all of his passing yards and touchdowns come in the second half. And I think there's a very good chance that's exactly kind of how this game goes again, is something like that.
And then that bumps it up to where if you wanted to play like Cook or instead of Breece Hall, doesn't leave us much because that's $100 away from James Conner. It's tough out here in these streets, man. Because
it's like what I said. You see now, like I'm telling you, almost every lineup has Penix and O'Connell. Like those are the two that I really like running, just because it gives you so much flexibility. Because I mean, I know Penix. He's 4,500, which is just, to me, insane for a QB that, I mean, even if you're looking for, say, 4 or 5X, you're talking about 20 points. And he's basically there. And I think Penix might even get you to Bijan if you want to do an unusual stack, right?
Yeah. I put in Connor.
I love Connor this week.
Yeah,
probably my most because you save a little bit to Gibbs, and again, Carolina's run defense. They're so bad. They've been so consistently bad. I went back and looked game by game. It's like every week a running back has basically 100 yards and a touchdown versus them.
Yeah. I'll throw in 80 Mitchell for the savings, and then we can
see what you got. Yeah.
And then Goff and Gibbs, unique stack.
I like it.
We're capturing all the Detroit points on that. And then 80 Mitchell's kind of slightly negative correlation with your defense, but
I would take Myers out and put DJ Moore in if we're going to do that. Don't you think?
DJ Moore. Did I pass him? And then that gets to 4K, where to keep Mitchell
Washington. Yeah.
Malik Washington. Yeah.
I like him too, but I'm good with Mitchell if you want to do that too.
Well, I was just thinking because you had the Titans defense.
Yeah.
Because of the negative correlation.
Yeah.
I do like, we talked about unique stacking
we could go up to 29. Is there any other defenses? That leaves us 300 actually for the defense.
29. That could get us up to Jags, Miami. I don't like any of those.
Yeah, I don't either.
Commander, no. Raiders, no. Yeah,
I'm with you. Yeah.
We'll leave some salary on there, but that's a fun lineup. I do like that. That's a very fun lineup.
I did meant to mention too, the Raiders defense this week is intriguing to me, and it's even with playing Jags. It's just they are all of a sudden getting sacks after sacks after sacks. Mac Jones is taking sacks, and that could be a deal, right, where it's good for your pass catchers, where you're getting 2 points here and there for every sack by the Raiders, putting them in more, long passing situations where it could be a win-win playing BTJ Strange, where they're just hitting, throwing the ball more, throwing it more down the field. Or what do those situations lead to? Pick sixes, strip sacks, etc.
Yeah, and then of course, the second you put Strange and BTJ in a lineup is when Devin Duvernay scores 2 touchdowns.
I want to
You
fight
know
somebody.
it, I know it. Or
I will want to fight somebody.
Newest Jacksonville Jaguar, Josh Reynolds.
Right.
I do want to build one more lineup with the Eagles Commanders.
I love it.
Playing that side of it, because I think you can take the savings instead of playing Hurts and play Jane Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and you could probably play. You could see where it gets you, because Devonta Smith is so cheap.
I would rather play Devontae than Brown and maybe try to smash Barkley in there.
That would be unique too. Do we still want to just jam in the Titans on defense and jam in Strange as a one-off?
Mm-hmm.
That at least gets us to.
This is where I like playing maybe one of those Raiders backs again. Abdullah is cheap, Madison. Because then if you still want to play, say, BTJ, you can. You think that
I think it's still it would be Abdullah for me as far as
I completely agree. Like, I like him better. He's the pass catching back. Again, his last 4 without McCormick, 19 catches. I like that. And then if he gets a few red zone touches, which he actually did, even when him and Madison were sharing the backfield, now we're talking.
Yeah. And then I wouldn't be too bad throwing like Spears in here too. To correlate with that Titans defense.
No, I love that.
As the flex, and that gives us 5,700 to play DJ Moore.
Boom. That was too easy.
That lineup was easy.
I think that lineup will be extremely unique. Especially just people are going to look at McLaurin's first matchup versus them. And I think that want to get away from it. I really do. I didn't think about, because I have Barkley in a lot of lineups. I kind of do like Devontae Smith at 5,800 without Goddard. That feels like gold.
That feels mispriced.
Yeah.
And then I want to see how you can play it the other way if you do it through Hurts. Let me put him in, because then you get your pick of running back basically at that, or you can split it between 2 other guys. Like, say I took Smith out, put AJ Brown in. No, I'd want to keep Smith in. But yeah, McLaurin obviously stays as the bring back on that. But that gives you 6,200 at both running back positions.
What is B-Rob?
B-Rob 62.
I was just curious because, if you think that obviously the Eagles are throwing a lot. Of course, that could be, again, they get up big, and then that would mean maybe McNichols wouldn't be an awful play.
That's tough because because Washington loves to spread the ball around to like all sorts of guys, where I think GPP wise,
we could take Tajay out and throw in like Ertz or
De'Ami Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me toss in De'Ami Brown at 3,400. That gets us 6,900.
Well, Joe got lucky that we didn't fuck with him about his moral standpoint on Aaron Rodgers last week. I gave him some greats on the phone, but he's going to be very disappointed to know he missed us putting De'Ami Brown in a lineup. Like, really disappointed.
There, and that's Hurts. I put Gibbs and Breece Hall in there. McLaurin, Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, Brenton Strange, De'Ami Brown, Titans defense. That might be my favorite lineup of the week.
The volume there is outrageous. Just looking, I was trying to figure out what are the other backs options. So Is that 300 left? So that would be, I guess Jones would be the highest you go right there.
Oh, for a running back? Yeah.
I'm just curious because Brees does scare me a little bit.
Do you like De'Ami Brown or real Malik Washington in there? Probably feel better about Malik Washington.
Right? I do.
I would too.
And it might even be a deal where I know we were saying just smashing Strange, but like how much is somebody like Ertz? Because if I remember correctly, he ended up in the last Philly game getting a bunch of garbage time.
38.
So
he's just $100 off.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. So no, I'm good with it. But predictions for tomorrow. The excited about 2 games on. Should have known.
I mean,
if he bleeds, he bleeds. I know. I mean, that was Mr. T. I'm sorry, I'm getting my Rocky movies mixed up.
I mean, what's it? It's Chiefs, Texans, and
Steelers, Ravens.
Steelers, Ravens.
I think it's going to be 2 rock fights, and boy, the NFL is going to be pissed.
Oh God! I wrote a soliloquy about the Texans in my Rotoballer article this week, just because I'm so
sick of Joe mixing up the middle.
No, I'm just sick of like PFF Bobby and just the way that Titans passing game has regressed from last season. But the offense is literally built around Joe Mixon now versus, what CJ Stroud was having to do last year because they didn't have any sort of running game. And now it feels like they've gone too far in the opposite way, where I think that's a Slowick thing where he might need to like find a common ground with the run game and CJ Stroud so that both can flourish rather than one having to be prioritized over the other and then the other suffering because of that, where you had both ends of the spectrum last year. Obviously the run game suffered. Granted, they didn't really have anybody to do that. They had Singletary and Damian Pierce and some of Gumbawale. This year, the passing game is suffering, and it's not totally like their fault. Like Nico Collins still gets there, but like Tank Dell has been probably the worst wide receiver in terms of a guy that's been starting all year and just has been an absolute bust.
Got to give Jorge credit there.
Yeah, that's tough, and that's and that's stuff. Some of the stuff where we talk about the chaos of the NFL season, and that's stuff that's like, how can you account for that? That's
he also had a serious injury last year, which I keep reminding people of that as well.
Yeah, that's fair too, but that's also, if you're out there and playing, you need to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. I get that aspect of it too, but yeah, I mean, we've seen the passing game. It's not even just like one guy, and because they've had injuries, obviously Stephon Diggs has been out for a couple months now, but like CJ Stroud is supposed to be the guy that's lifting up these pass catchers, and he's not doing that. So I think that's some on Stroud, some on the offensive play calling. Because they've had Joe Mixon, it's kind of been papered over with the Texans to where we're going to have to really think long and hard about anybody else outside of Nico Collins next year.
I completely agree. I love both favorites, money line and both unders. I think that is actually a really good parlay. I really do. I think you're going to see some real rock fights tomorrow. And Lamar, I do want to see something from him, though. For whatever reason, this is the one team. This is the only team that he has not had one like great game against in his NFL career. He's only played him 4 times, so I'm not killing the guy for it. But it is shocking that for whatever reason, their biggest rival is like the one team he has not been able to figure out yet. Or again, you can put credit, more on the coaching staff. They haven't figured out how to use Lamar to beat Pittsburgh, but I'm excited. It's 2 good games. Again, I hate though that the AFC, like I'm going to pay close attention to the injuries. You got all these teams that are Super Bowl contenders playing 3 games in less than 2 weeks. I think that's madness at the end of an 18-game season when we see how many guys are getting injured at, this rate anyway, this time of year.
It's money driven. That's pretty much all you can attribute that to. And it sucks and it is what it is. But, the dollar has more weight than anything else at this point, than player safety, as much as they want to try to talk about how much that has been, emphasis around the league. I think it's, obviously there's talking, and it just doesn't matter where that gets to, because when you're funneling in wheelbarrows full of money from Amazon and from all these other sources to get these teams, and they're not, they're not paying to get the Jaguars and the Raiders. They're not paying to get the Cardinals and the Panthers. They're paying for Chiefs, Texans. They're paying for Steelers, Ravens. There's all these Saturday games that are, more Saturday games. Wednesday games. It's going to be more the norm. I mean, next year, I'm sure we'll get an announcement that they're going to have a game in Kazakhstan or something like that, just to, the international series. Sorry, Giants and Jaguars, we're sending you to Mongolia to go play.
Oh, the Jags have their hands up. They're like, we're way better overseas than we are in the States. So just send
Mongolia's team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yep. Sure, that'll go great.
Well, in case you're not watching the college football game, maybe all those people that were so gung-ho about how Indiana deserved to get in this thing.
Oh, you mean James Madison West?
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
Again,
I'm happy. The score?
It's 20-3, but I mean, they've been getting. They literally had a shot on I think it was their first or second drive from about Notre Dame 20. They threw a pick, and the very next play, Notre Dame's running back went like 94 yards for a touchdown. And since then, it has been a totally different game. But I'm very happy because we play Notre Dame next. Feel pretty good about that. Go Dogs.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Game of the week next week. Game of the week tomorrow. We talked about Chiefs Texans. We talked about Steelers Ravens at noon Eastern. North Dakota State, South Dakota State, the Dakota Marker game in the FCS semifinals in Fargo at the Fargo Dome. I believe that's going to be on ABC. That's going to be a fun game. So,
good God, I just realized too, there's 3 college football playoff games tomorrow. My wife's not going to be happy. I may not leave the recliner.
3 of the 4 semifinal teams are in the Dakotas. South Dakota State, North Dakota State, and Montana State is the number 1 seed. The Montana State and South Dakota are playing the winner.
That Montana State win the most, or is that wrong?
Montana State's on they're the number 1 team in FCS.
But I'm saying, hadn't they won a bunch of national titles recently at that level? Or
NDSU has. SDSU has won I think 2 of the last 3. And then NDSU won the one in 2022. But yeah, so that should be a fun game. The FCS has been doing the college football playoff well before the FBS decided they wanted to copy. So I'll put that out there.
Take that, jerks. Kev, as always, I've enjoyed it. Good luck to everyone in their matchups, and most importantly, Merry Christmas. You can see me and Kevin Monday night, right? For the Waiver Wire end of the year award show. Will be a lot of fun. Come hang out with us. You know you're not going to want to spend time with your family, so just come hang out with us.
Spend it with your Fantasy and Frames family.
Amen. Well, we will see you soon, Joe. Have fun in Vegas. Let's not turn this into a hangover situation, okay, buddy? Because we're not coming to get you.